It is Monday, January 20th, 2021. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal, and it was yet another non-virtual Get Your Ass Kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Monday. Had a lot of fun today, a lot of fun. It was a little bit different. We actually did a submission today, which made me very happy, and it was kind of starting off from a position where you're at the underside of a lockdown in half guard. So you got your opponent's leg between yours, and then you got one leg curled underneath, and then one leg wrapped over the top. And from there, your opponent is trying to get that leg disengaged, get around to side control, and then going from side control to a full mount, you bump your opponent, right? And you do like an Oompa escape and end up in their full guard, and then they take the full guard to an arm bar. And the armbar we were doing was kind of interesting. It was one that I've had a lot of trouble with to begin with, a long time ago, galaxy far, far away. And so, like, if you're going for your opponent's left arm, you'll reach through over the top of their arms and kind of hook the back of their right tricep and really curl it into you. And then you bring your right leg up, you disengage your legs behind their back after you've got that. And just for the sake of mention, one thing I like to do right there is on the arm that you've got your hand trapping from the outside, it's a good thing to take your other hand and put it up behind the tricep of that same arm. And so when you're pushing the arm over to give yourself the angle for the arm bar on the opposite arm, it's a little bit more in the crook there, And I found that I really enjoyed that one a lot. But I was having a little bit of trouble with it from the bottom perspective, and on the top perspective, the thing that I was having the most challenge with was doing the full complete movement. Because it was funny, I was in a three-way between me and two other partners, and I know that sounds kind of sexual, but it's not. It's all jiu-jitsu. And one of our partners has been doing jiu-jitsu for a significant period of time, way longer than I have even. And he showed us this little add-on that made the movement we were doing so effective that I was able to cut out the going to side control entirely. And what it was like when you're trying to get around that and go get to side control, disengage the half guard and get to side control. One thing he was doing that I found really, really interesting is that he would get up on his toes, and he would tippy toes as close as he could get to your buttock. And the reason for doing that is that you can't, if you're on the bottom, you have to bring your knees up practically to your shoulders to be able to get to a point, get to an angle where you can rewrap your legs around your opponents. And some people can do that, but I can't. I mean, and especially not when I've got my opponent stacking me from the top. That's what makes it tough, is that you've got your opponent stacking you from the top, and it's holding your hips down. So the idea of being able to bring your hips high enough to raise your legs high enough to be able to rewrap is like, it's virtually impossible from that angle. So I really enjoyed that a lot, and so one of the things that I was doing was, I get way up on the tippy toes, and then I would take the leg that's not wrapped, hook it over the right leg, and push down on it to open up. But then on the other leg, and this is where it was kind of different from what we were being instructed, is that, what you're supposed to do is take that knee and swing it to the outside of your opponent and then kind of step it out and get it hooked to where you've got that one foot hooked by your opponent. Well, I found that if I squatted back down a little bit from that position, after I got that thigh hooked with my left foot, I found that if I pushed back down and bending my knee on my right side, I was able to pull my foot all the way out. And then I would just push my foot out to the side, disengage the foot that I've got hooked around the thigh, and I'm already knee on belly right there. And so I would just transition from knee on belly from that position straight off into mount. And it negated the need to have to push back with my other foot just to disengage the quarter guard to be able to get my leg free. But although I did find that there was one little bit that made easier in trying to get around your opponent, is that if you do let them capture that quarter guard, it lets you get that arm up under their arm for grabbing their elbow and really pulling it up and getting it into a tight side control. And I really like doing that side control. So it was 50 of one, half of the other, you know. I mean, it was one thing I could do or not do, you know. And but I tend to go with things that make my technique more efficient. And so, you know, having that calf right across my opponent's hips and just navigating that straight off into side control, it kind of wigged my training partner out a little bit when I did it the first time. He's like, dude, you skipped like 4 steps. You got to the same place, but you skipped 4 steps. Anyway, it was a lot of fun, but I did not do any ass kicking, did not get my ass kicked. I don't know, I could have stayed for a little bit longer, but I opted to get my ass home and shower up. Perhaps tomorrow, you never know. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw down with some music. And you know we're going to start off with some body count. But which song is always the challenge. Here we go. The Ski Mask Way, First Dance, here on Coin Metal. Yeah, we were going to let it fly, but I figured it was time to step in. There's a little bit of Static X there on the end. I didn't catch the name of the song. I just want to say it's over, but I don't know that that's the name of it. Anyway, All in Weight, that's what it was. Damn it. I had to think about it a moment there. You know, get a little baked. Anyway, as far as what we're getting into today, I've got to make a minor adjustment. I always wait until the last minute to do this, too. I did see one thing. Apparently, Biden did something kind of smart, although I don't know that it's something that is under his control or whatever per se. But supposedly, he put some sort of moratorium on FinCEN's little threat that they're going to lock down on personally held wallets, or that they're going to require a whole bunch of fucking AML KYC. Oh, you got to know exactly who it is that you're sending your Bitcoin to. You got to make sure you're not funding terrorism. It's fucking bullshit. I mean, you know what pisses me off about it the most, and we've talked about it on this show quite a bit, is they're still writing on this fucking idea that some significant amount of criminal activity is being facilitated with cryptocurrencies. And it's fucking bullshit. There's just not enough money in the crypto sphere to fund a significant criminal enterprise. Unless, of course, it's a cryptocurrency itself. But the point being that when you look at the contrast between how much criminal activity is facilitated by our banks. They still use credit cards out there. Okay? And really, the only legal requirement the banks have is that if they suspect that it's a suspicious transaction, they got to report it. That's it. They just report it. They call up the FinCEN and they say, hey, yo, I just did this transaction for like $15,300 and we think it might have had something to do with some child pornography. And FinCEN says, oh, cool. All right, well, give me like the transaction ID on that. Okay. All right, yeah, just go ahead and file a suspicious transaction report and you're golden, man. Just, thanks for the heads up. And that's it. That's it. That's the long and short of it. When they talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in terms of facilitating criminal activity, they never bring that up. They never bring up the volume of STRs they receive every fucking day from banks throughout the entire United States concerning digital transactions using bank accounts, using credit cards. Hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of fucking dollars worth of criminal activity cycling through the banks, all kinds of money laundering going on. And they just let it go through because, they get rewarded for it. I don't know if they get any kind of kickback from FinCEN. I would assume that maybe they get some sort of tax relief for participation or some bullshit like that. But they look back at crypto, though, and they're like, oh, we don't control it, so it's got to be all criminal activity. It's a bunch of bullshit. Simply a bunch of bullshit. If there was that much criminal activity being facilitated by cryptocurrencies, people wouldn't support them. If they were seeing evidence in their own neighborhood, in their own lives, that some significant amount of money is being dedicated to movements that they do not like, that are adverse to their lifestyle or adverse to their being able to live, then they would react to it. And crypto is really different in that aspect from like every other money that's ever come. Is that we're under no national fealty to support these cryptocurrencies at all. We are under no obligation to honor them as money, but we do. We do enough to dedicate real-world hardware, electricity, and bandwidth to, and effort. There's plenty of PETA involved. And don't go into this thinking there isn't, because there is. However, there's a lot of reward to be gained out of it too. And you just got to weigh it for yourself, which, is it worth it to you to do? Is it worth it to you to participate in? Do you have any value in it? And if you don't, that's fine. Hey, it'll continue to exist whether or not you are here. Anyway, so I got this thing here. It's on news.bitcoin.com, and this is authored by Kevin Helms approximately 8 hours ago. But yes, penis. Janet Yellen reveals plans for Bitcoin, sees cryptocurrencies used mainly for illicit financing. Janet Yellen, Joe Biden's pick for Treasury Secretary, has revealed her policy for cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin. She claims that cryptocurrencies are mainly used for illicit financing, and their use needs to be curtailed. Good fucking luck at that. Janet Yellen reveals her plans in the Senate hearing to consider Janet Yellen's nomination as Secretary of the Treasury on Tuesday. Yellen was asked about cryptocurrencies. She is Joe Biden's pick to lead the Treasury Department under his administration. The crypto question was asked by Senator Maggie Hassan, that was Democrat New Hampshire, who talked about, quote, the importance of Treasury programs to combat the financing of terrorists and criminal organizations. She said she had raised the issue in previous hearings with Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. Quote, the Bipartisan National Defense Authorization Act passed earlier this month, and it included a provision led by Senator Warner that established an advisory group with Treasury to counter new ways that terrorists use emerging financial technology. She began, quote, one area of growing concern, for example, is the potential for terrorists and criminals to use cryptocurrency to finance their activities. Senator Hassan proceeded with her question, quote, so Dr. Yellen, can you outline some of these emerging technological concerns and how Treasury should combat new forms of terrorists and criminal financing? Yellen replied, quote, Senator, I think you are absolutely right that the technologies to accomplish this change over time, and we need to make sure that our methods for dealing with these matters with tech terrorists financing change along with the changing technology. The incoming Treasury Secretary elaborated, quote, cryptocurrencies are a particular concern. I think many are used, at least in a transaction sense, mainly for illicit financing, and I think that we really need to examine ways in which we can curtail their use and make sure that anti-money laundering doesn't occur through those channels. That's interesting. Bitcoiners react to Yellen's remarks. Following Yellen's Senate testimony, the crypto community pointed out that several flaws in her statements. Russell Okung, the pro football star who recently became the first NFL player to get paid in Bitcoin, commented, quote, Treasury Secretary nominee Yellen says that Bitcoin is a concern for terrorist financing, money laundering, as if the USD isn't. Don't be distracted. The things of old are passing away. Fight for your future. Dan Held, growth lead at crypto exchange Kraken, pointed out 0.3% of all cryptocurrency activity in 2020 was illicit. 90% of US dollars have cocaine on them. Which one is, quote, used by the bad guys again? Morgan Creek digital partner Anthony Pompliano similarly described, quote, Janet Yellen stated today that cryptocurrencies are concerning because of terrorist financing and money laundering. She forgot to mention that the US dollar is the choice currency of criminals around the world. He added, quote, the large banks launder more money than the entire Bitcoin market cap. It's absolutely true, too. And, by the way, some of them actually use crypto in order to do it. Some people reference the, quote, Bitcoin sign guy who rose to fame when he held up a sign that says, quote, buy Bitcoin behind Yellen as she testified in a previous Senate hearing as the Financial Reserve Chairman. Perhaps she, quote, missed the sign, some Bitcoiners suggested. Ivan on Tech tweeted Wednesday, quote, Janet Yellen promises to go after Bitcoin in a recent interview. She is still salty for that Bitcoin sign incident. Yellen is not the only one suggesting recently that most crypto activities are for illicit purposes. Last week, the president of European Central Bank, ECB, Christine Lagarde, said that Bitcoin, quote, has conducted some funny business and some interesting and totally reprehensible money laundering activity. However, a famous economist quickly contradicted her, calling the ECB's chief statement, quote, absolutely outrageous when we all know that the vast majority of money laundering globally is conducted in fiat currencies, particularly in US dollars and euros. What do you think about Janet Yellen's crypto remarks? Let us know in the comments below. Has anybody commented? Let's find out. Join the discussion. Oh, 2 comments. Joey is a fraud says, LOL, Yellen has no control over Bitcoin. The Federal, it isn't, Reserve, it doesn't, is a defunct operation. Wilfred Monkey says, hate what you can't control. It's about loss of control. It's more about loss of control than about illicit financing. Damn Skippy, it is. And those of you that hold some sort of doubt in that, understand this. That when Bitcoin started, when I started with Bitcoin, which was way before any of you fruits, and I'm not claiming that as any kind of expertise or anything like that, because the fact of the matter is I had a lot of help setting it up, although I wasn't really sure I had it set up properly. But the point being that I was receiving work from other miners, I was on the network, and when I turned my computer off, they actually noticed it missing, which was amazing to me because it was such an old machine. But the point being that back then it was all mono mining, and we had no assurance that what we were doing was even quote unquote legal. I mean, you only have to look back in the past and see. I went into this without any knowledge of like e-gold or any of that other shit. I was just like, man, this sounds legit. It sounds good enough to try. Let's go for it. See what happens. And at the time, I was unemployed, so I can give you an idea of where I was at. But the point being that, I was relatively low tech, and that's one of the things that makes me laugh the most about this stuff is people telling you that this stuff is all that complex and whatnot. It's really not. Not as it was originally intended, as it originally operated. I mean, back when I got back into mining, I did a little bit of GPU mining, enough to be able to occupy a wallet with, a couple hundreds of a Bitcoin. But it was enough to be able to demonstrate to myself and others exactly how it functioned. And I mean, I was amazed initially when it was just before any of that replaced by fee or before the block space was actually limited. I'm pretty sure it was at the time that I did my first transaction. It was not limited, so it was the transactions came in as received and were put in a block as received, and everything was cool. And so when I did that, noticing how fast the transaction happened, I was completely fucking mystified, man. It went from my wallet on a mining pool to my wallet on my device, and I'm like, and it fucking happened like within 10 minutes. It was actually like, I want to say like 3 or 4 minutes. But the point being is, it was instantaneous by comparison to every single payment system on this fucking planet. And it was settled globally. None of this fucking Lightning Network bullshit where you gotta wait until the fucking payment channel closes for all the balances to settle, or pull your shit out or whatever. But you actually have to do a transaction in order to do that on your own. And therein you run into the transaction fee issue and the waiting around in the fucking mempool issue, and so on and so forth. None of that shit existed in the original Bitcoin. And as a matter of fact, that can change at any time. And it's something very, very important to remember about cryptocurrencies is that if the vast majority of the miners decide, you know what, we're going to shit-can SegWit, we're going to shit-can replace by fee, we're going to shit-can fucking the block size limit, and we're just going to go forward without any of those implementations in Bitcoin. If they decided that tomorrow, it might fuck up a few transactions, but because Bitcoin is supposed to be backwards compatible, any additional implementations on top of it should be able to be passively exchanged back into the system without any issue. Like a SegWit address the coins tied up in a SegWit address could probably be sent back to a legacy address, and doing so would be very, very cheap, because again, Your transactions aren't having to compete for block space. The blocks will be as big as the volume of transactions that occur over the 10-minute period of the block. And that's it. I think we will eventually get back to that. See, the thing that a lot of these people that are depending on the idea of multiple layers on top of Bitcoin and not touching back down to the original quote-unquote blockchain are not taking into account is a couple of things. Number one, block space will always get more expensive. As the US dollar depreciates against Bitcoin, the block space will always get more expensive both in US dollars and in Bitcoin to be able to put your transactions in them. And so it's not just going to be more expensive for us end users, it's also going to get more expensive for the banks. And so when you're looking at it from that context, you understand that these people they're fucking sticking their fingers into a Chinese finger trap, and at one point or another, one of them is going to end up overcommitted, and they're not going to be able to get their fingers back out, and they're not going to be able to cash out profitably, and they're going to have to take it in the ass just to do it. And this day is coming, man. It's not an imaginary thing, I would say it's probably related to the halvening if you really want to get back down to it, but yeah, like I said, it'll get more expensive both ways, and these guys that are doing their second and third layer transactions, you're just going to run into it the same way every time. It's one of the reasons why it's very important for more people to be mining. Is that when the hash power is in the hands of more people, the decisions that are made take more deliberation, and that's actually a good thing, because it means that you actually have to listen to the other constituencies involved. Anyway, we got this other thing here, and we're only going to touch a little bit on it because we've been covering USDT ad nauseum as of late, and I don't want to spend too much time on them on this episode. But I do have this article here, and I think it's important to kind of stay abreast of this kind of stuff. Anyway, this is by Andrew Asmakov, and so yes, penis. Tether produces more than 2.5 million documents to NYAG. And this is authored on January 20th, 2021. iFinex, the parent company of crypto exchange Bitfinex and Tether, issuer of the eponymous stablecoin. I know that's not the right pronunciation of it, but I can't figure it out right now. Stablecoin Tether has provided millions of documents to the New York Attorney General in regards to its investigation. The state prosecutor's investigation is into the alleged lack of disclosures over a missing $850 million that was seized by police from its previous banking partner. The firm asked the New York State Supreme Court for, quote, few more weeks to produce supplemental information. In a letter submitted January 19th, iFinex says it is planning to contact the court in the next 30 days, quote, to either provide a final status update or to schedule a conference to discuss any open items. According to Stuart Hogner, the Bitfinex and Tether General Counsel, the, quote, discussions with the AG's office are productive and going well. Quote, we look forward to continuing those. We have mediated our disputes, which I think is positive progress. Unfortunately, I can't share further details here, wrote Hogner on Tuesday. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. I think ultimately we may or may not find out whether or not Tether actually has the money. I don't care if they do, really. I mean, it would be nice if they did, because then they would be able to satisfy these demands without any real issue. But I've never believed in the idea of a quote-unquote stable coin. As far as I'm concerned, it's just a way to suck US dollars back out of the cryptosphere and replace them with proxies that are not US dollars. Now, the banks have decided to, or at least the OCC, Department of the Treasury, has decided to kind of open up the interpretation of who can be a bank, and also the interpretation of who can hold a bank account and for what purposes, and specifically amended those to include the possibility of banks hosting physical US dollars, or not physical US dollars, but deposits of US dollars to act as collateral for their customers' quote-unquote stablecoins. And that's a big deal. I mean, really, if that rule had been in place when Tether started, they really wouldn't be in any issue right now. And so sometimes I look at the kind of events that are unfolding here, and it literally it makes me believe that iFinex is a proxy of the Federal Reserve, or at least one of the reserve banks. And where this makes me what makes me believe it is a couple of things. Number one, if the SEC could define anything in the cryptosphere as a quote-unquote security, it would be Tether or stablecoins, because supposedly they represent they're a quote-unquote security representing a volume of US dollars or US dollar denominated debt or asset or whatever, but they represent a percentage of that, a chunk of that, a slice of it, a share of it. And so again, if there was anything at all that the SEC could or should throw the hammer at and say, yo, that's a fucking security, it would be stablecoins. Because again, not only do they represent a percentage of something, they supposedly represent a percentage of a volume of US dollars, supposedly in an account. And this applies specifically to coins like USDC or GUSD that are backed by like Goldman Sachs, ultimately Goldman Sachs, and Gemini. And GUSD is partially backed by Goldman Sachs too. So a lot of incestuous relationships behind the doors there. And again, they should be getting brought up on fucking antitrust, because you're talking about, even if you have to go down back through the layers, you find out that Goldman Sachs has their hand up everybody's ass in crypto. I mean, DCG, all those motherfuckers, they've all got some of Goldman Sachs' money in their pocket or in their bank account. Or they're just acting as regulatory proxies for all of these entities and getting rewarded as such. The point being that when we're looking at things that could possibly serve as being a quote-unquote security or fit the legal definition of such, again, stablecoins would hit it way before things like Ripple. You know, the biggest thing that caught my eye in the Ripple case is the fact that they're alleging that Ripple or XRPs are a quote-unquote security. The basis for which they're claiming that they're interpreting it as the XRP are a percentage or a share of Ripple Labs. They're no more a share of Ripple Labs than a Pizza Hut pizza is a share of Pizza Hut the company. They are a product of Ripple Labs. They are sold by Ripple Labs, and Ripple Labs makes their money primarily on the sale and support of XRP. It's like a cable company, you know? Like if you're getting cable service from a cable company, when you're paying your bill every fucking month, you're not buying a share in Comcast. You're paying for the services that you're receiving. Same thing, same difference. And so, like I said, I think ultimately the SEC's case against XRP is going to fall flat on its face. I mean, especially if they have competent people there that should be working there. And again, if they were to get some sort of clarity or understanding of what's going on here in crypto, they will probably reevaluate things like whether or not they consider stablecoins to be securities. Because again, it's not just that they're representing a share of something, they're representing a share of supposed volumes of fiat currency. And that to me is a bigger threat than some shit like Ripple. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down with some music. And I want to open it up with a little bit of Death Clock here, the Galaxy, here on Coin Metal. And that was Marilyn Manson, Man That You Fear. Now, I tend not to play Marilyn Manson only because, I don't know. This music's okay. There's one or two songs on that album I like, but for the most part, they sound like that, and I don't find it terribly exciting. Anywho, as far as what else we're gonna get into, covered that one, and we covered that one, but we did not cover this one. This one's on CoinDesk. Dan Larimer's departure brings EOS disappointments to the fore. And this is by Brady Dale. It was authored on January 19th, 2021 at 3:13 p.m. PST. On January 10th, leading pro-EOS YouTuber Colin Talks Crypto announced that he had sold his holdings following the revelation earlier that day that Dan Larimer had resigned his position as CTO of Block.one, the company that made the software powering the EOS blockchain. In fact, Larimer has been gone since the end of the year. EOS, as of this writing, is the 16th largest blockchain by market capitalization, according to CoinGecko, right after the privacy coin Monero, and right above decentralized finance protocol Aave. Its market capitalization took another hit following the Larimer news, losing about $1 billion in a day. Hopes for EOS have in many ways hinged on the actions of Block.one, the company that successfully completed a year-long initial coin offering that raised a record-setting $4 billion. These days, however, Block.one is more explicitly about driving value to its stash of 140,000 Bitcoin, and counting, than its considerable EOS position. Brendan Bloomer tweets, B1 is building products designed to leverage our Bitcoin as more than just a store of value, and we have accumulated well beyond our previously announced 140,000 Bitcoin position. We are in internal testing in alpha stages. To be fair, Block.one never really promised to do more than provide the underlying software for EOS, and it has continued to do so. In fact, as EOS has become clogged in recent years, Block.one has released a new way for users to pay for transactions as they go, rather than the original approach of staking EOS for a percentage of the network resources, which sounds a lot like Ethereum's approach with gas. Winding back the clock, Block.one launched EOS in a unique way, probably the most hands-off approach of any significant blockchain since Bitcoin. It wrote the code for the software that runs EOS and then just published it, so that anyone who wanted to kick it off could do so. As it had given supporters considerable warning about doing this, though, by the time the code was released, there was already a global coalition in place running hours-long calls over Google Hangouts to plot the launch of the chain so that one and only one would be viewed as the EOS blockchain. After fits and starts, the Global Launch Committee finally got the chain running in neutral, and then, after another delay, a sufficient number of EOS bag holders cast on-chain votes so that EOS actually started producing blocks on June 14, 2018. All of this happened at arm's length from Block.one itself. In fact, Block.one did not start participating in EOS governance until last year, despite being the largest single holder of EOS tokens. This separation between the software's originator and its administration may help explain why Block.one got off with a light settlement from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Once through that regulatory gauntlet, Block.one has been free to pursue its own ideas about the best use of its considerable capital. Early EOS backers have always believed that ICO funds entrusted to Block.one would be used to drive value back to the blockchain in order to make EOS tokens more valuable. That has never really happened, however, which has driven frustration by long-time EOS backers. Many, like Colin Talks Crypto, have moved on. Quote, "I just sold 100% of my EOS tokens as a result of this news. For me, it was the last straw," Colin Talks Crypto said in the June 10th video. The YouTuber is one of the better-known EOS proponents on social media. Besides running multiple social media channels where he discussed the cryptocurrency, he also ran an EOS proxy where holders could back his picks for the best block producers. And more on those below. Colin Talks Crypto also shut down his proxy following Larimer's departure. Many stakeholders. Before we go any further, here are a few points of context, because the EOS ecosystem can get confusing. Block.one is the company that ran the ICO that led to the launch of EOS. The ICO ran on Ethereum, and then all of the tokens on Ethereum were ported over to EOS. In mid-2019, Bloomberg reported the company had more than $2 billion in cash and 140,000 Bitcoin. Its backers include early Facebook investor and PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel. Block.one uses its ICO funds by making investments directly and also indirectly through other funds that it is invested in, including Mike Novogratz' Galaxy Digital. Novogratz sold off shares that Galaxy held in Block.one in 2019. The most confusing point is probably this one. Block.one built EOS.io, the software that runs EOS. EOS.io is not EOS. And other public blockchains also run on EOS.io, such as Telos, Worldwide Asset Exchange, and others. Telos was launched as one of the earliest forks of EOS and Suvi Rinikin, the CEO of Telos Foundation, confirmed to CoinDesk that Block.one has never invested in her organization. Quote, Telos is standing strong no matter what happens at Block.one. Although we are grateful for the EOS.io codebase, it is the community that makes or breaks public blockchains, she wrote over Telegram. And that's a really important point to make there. And it's one that I think that some people in crypto are really quick to try to dismiss or deride because they just don't understand that aspect of it. Anyway, continuing on. EOS was the first and best known public blockchain launched using EOS.io software, and the one that has by far the largest market capitalization. Block.one often speaks of advancing EOS.io, but seldom of EOS. This distinction is not lost on EOS holders, but likely is lost on casual observers. EOS is run using the delegated proof-of-stake consensus mechanism devised by Larimer and first used on Steam, such that EOS token holders continuously participate in an election of the 21 entities that lead the chain. The parties can dissolve disputes, verify transactions, and make upgrades to the network. Those 21 entities are called block producers, and they earn new EOS as it is minted with each block for verifying transactions. They serve basically the same role as miners on the proof-of-work Bitcoin and Ethereum networks. EOS holders often contend that theirs is the most active blockchain, but subsequent research has cast significant doubt on such claims. BTC Pivot. While Larimer has been plotting his move away from Block.one, its CEO Brendan Bloomer has been talking more and more about Bitcoin alongside a pro-regulatory vision for blockchain technology. In October, Bloomer gave an interview to a Forbes contributor in which he said, quote, Block.one is a holding company, and I see different business emerging, but technology projects take a long time. In that interview, he said that Block.one has three components: building out EOS.io as something that can be used by businesses, investing in other companies and building its own businesses, giving the social network Voice.com as his example. What he didn't include seems to be more salient to EOS token holders, making investments that will drive value to EOS in particular rather than EOS.io. In October, at the end of the boom on Ethereum that came to be known as DeFi Summer, EOS holders questioned Bloomer on Twitter about why the DeFi boom hadn't reached EOS. Block.one, some felt, could have funded versions of Ethereum's successful use cases on EOS, where presumably they could run with lower transaction fees. In his response, Bloomer wrote, quote, We are very interested in investing in EOS DeFi that can meet the compliance requirements of B1 and are actively on the lookout. The same complaint resurfaced again in January. In November, Bloomer would use the Profi hashtag in another tweet about the inaccessibility of DeFi for institutional investors. Quote, The innovation in the DeFi space is revolutionary, but the recent guidance of global regulators regarding its lack of compliance controls makes it difficult for mainstream capital to access the opportunity, he wrote. You notice he didn't say impossible, because it's not impossible. They can all engage in it on their own. Continuing, the same day he posted how regulators are starting to see the advantages of Bitcoin as a form of money that's easy to supervise, seemingly echoed a point made by former U.S. Treasury Secretary Larry Summers in 2020 that money as we know it has too much privacy. Bullshit. The next day, Bloomer would take this further with a Twitter thread in which he describes a compliance-first approach as playing the long game. He wrote, "At B1, we're firm believers that the regulatory maturity of the ecosystem is advancing at an exponential rate, and the harmonious integration of both traditional and crypto ecosystems that is facilitated by compliance will continue to pave the path of mainstream adoption." You are incorrect, sir. In late November and December, his attention on Twitter would turn more and more to Bitcoin, as it did for most people in the industry. He would post about BTC replacing gold and an inadequate supply of BTC for institutional demand. And then one of Block One's investors, Christian Angermayer, would weigh in, calling Block.one's BTC holdings, quote, the most strategic Bitcoin position in the world, adding the hashtag of Profi. What good would any of this Bitcoin talk do for EOS holders, though? Bloomer had an answer. EOS offers a high-performance decentralized Layer 2 scaling solution for Bitcoin. That's why I'm so bullish on both. Lying sack of shit. It's hard to imagine EOS superseding, for example, Lightning from within the Bitcoin community as we now know it. EOS today runs on the basis of payoffs to governance participants, and there's no way to know how many of the existing block producers aren't one or just a few entities, or a few entities in collusion. This is a long-standing tension in crypto between the pioneers of the space who wanted to build a separate economy and the newcomers looking to maximize profits by plugging it into the traditional economy. Larimer, as we'll see, leans toward the former, but Bloomer's allegiance seems to be to the latter. He may look forward to a future in which it is not Bitcoin's existing users relying on EOS so much as institutional adopters that want a solution that's fast, cheap, and easy to track. Quote, as Brennan has said in recent tweets, Block.one is working on products designed to leverage our Bitcoin position, built with the EOS.io software. Christina Panton, a spokesperson for Block.one, told CoinDesk in an email, quote, we believe that networks like EOS built on EOS.io has the capacity and scalability to bridge a highly valuable token like Bitcoin, which is unfortunately slow and expensive to transfer. Aaron Cox of the block producer candidate Greymass told CoinDesk over Telegram that the EOS community would likely support more Bitcoin integrations. Quote, with as much tribalism as exists in this space, I don't think there's a lot of outward aggression from within the EOS.io community towards other chains. Even despite all of the hatred EOS/EOS.io gets, he wrote, it's not like EOS or any other EOS.io token that I'm aware of is out to replace projects like Bitcoin, so it only makes sense to find ways they can support each other. One longtime member of the EOS community is less excited about the prospects for Bitcoin on EOS. A pseudonymous user going by Blockchain Kid on Telegram and Twitter posted, quote, let's call a spade a spade. The EOS token sale was just a massive wealth transfer from retail crypto buyers to Block.one founders and early investors. A series of disappointments. Colin Talks Crypto and Blockchain Kid aren't the only ones who took to social media to express disappointment. Larimer also does not seem happy with how this endeavor has turned out. There's a meme around Larimer that he always abandons projects, but he's been working on EOS for at least 3 years now, And it's important to also note the major contributions he has made in the industry. They include laying the foundation for DeFi, building software to run a new consensus model, and articulating the concept of decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs. Larimer's first announced he was leaving Block.one on the blockchain blogging site Hive, which is a hard fork of the last protocol he built, Steam. He then substantiated the announcement on Voice, the Block.one backed social network. Larimer wrote, quote, "I do not know exactly what is next, but I am leaning toward building more censorship-resistant technologies. I have come to believe that you cannot provide liberty as a service, and therefore I will focus my attention on creating tools that people can use to secure their own freedom." In a subsequent update that followed on Hive, Larimer wrote with seeming frustration, quote, What can we do to make EOS successful? There is no single answer to that question, because we all have different definitions of, quote, success, and the paths to success can head in opposite directions. The most common definition of success that I see is a high token price. EOS is successful if everyone who buys it makes money. What if EOS achieved this success by becoming a completely regulated, centralized walled garden of KYC users? These comments seem to come somewhat in response to those above from his co-founder, emphasizing an investor and regulatory-friendly future for the protocol Larimer created. For his part, Larimer only had frustration for an era in which every interaction with cryptocurrency incurs a taxable event. Larimer also seemed disappointed in the EOS community's failure to function as the sort of DAO he had envisioned. After all, it wasn't essential for them to rely on Block.one to build on EOS. The blockchain was built to fund the development itself. The EOS design assumed that token holders would support block producer candidates who did the most to drive the value to the blockchain by reinvesting the tokens they earned in funding EOS applications. EOS was also designed with a fund in place that EOS holders could use collectively to pay for development as a collective. After failing to create a governance system for EOS, the block producers burned the, quote, savings account meant to fund such development in May 2019, causing a short-term bump in price, but long-term doubts about the community's commitment to a useful blockchain. And block producers that built didn't earn community backing by and large. Instead, the ones that primarily used their earnings to pay voters back then came to dominate the leadership roles. However, the CEO has defended the practice of buying votes on Twitter. Quote, "When BPs offer token holders revenue for their vote, it lowers the cost of network operation by passing value back to the holders," Bloomer wrote. For his part, though, Larimer seemed to share the concerns about bribery that CoinDesk had reported on. He wrote in his January 10th Hive post, quote, "In theory, token holders are supposed to vote in producers that provide the most value to the network. In practice, token holders vote in people who pay them kickbacks. It would be like Apple shareholders electing a board that issued new shares and distributed them as kickbacks to a subset of shareholders." After burning the savings account and devoting the block reward to payoffs, it's no wonder the community expected Block.one to build for it. Who else could afford to? But Block.one has shown little tangible interest in doing so. After all, the returns on Bitcoin have been so much better. Departures. When Colin Talks Crypto described Larimer's departure as, quote, the last straw, he went on to produce another 18 minutes of frustration. First, the fact that Voice is not running on EOS. When he first announced in June 2019, Block.one had said every Voice user would get an EOS account automatically. By January 2020, it had walked that back, indicating that it wouldn't launch on EOS, but that Block.one would like it to leverage the EOS blockchain and potentially others. Last January, CEO Brendan Bloomer took to Twitter to describe CoinDesk's reporting as misleading, but even then he didn't reiterate the commitment from June, instead writing only that, quote, publishing to public chains will diversify moderation and strengthen censorship resistance. Similarly, on January 8th, Voice.com CEO Zalatimo wrote in a blog comment that can be seen republished here that the team remains committed to, quote, linking up with the EOS mainnet, language that falls short of the originally promised plan to run Voice on EOS. In fact, CoinDesk has been only able to identify one project backed by Block.one that's running on EOS, and that's Everipedia. Another company backed by Block.one, Mythical Games, has announced its intention to run on EOS, but CoinDesk has not been able to verify that it has done so. In December, a lead developer tweeted that the game intended to, quote, connect with the mainnet. A request for comment to the company has not been returned by press time. When asked to confirm whether or not these were companies' only investments that run atop EOS, Block.one responded but didn't answer the question. Quote, Block.one and its partner funds have made more than 70 plus investments into companies already using EOS